All right, so I want to welcome everyone to the Rally to Inspire Student Talent. So this event is intended for industry professionals to come together to provide words of encouragement to really energize and inspire students for a possible career in the sports industry. So we know it's challenging finding a job historically, and particularly in an industry as competitive as sports. And so we just want to be able to share some lessons learned, some advice to really keep you excited and hopeful and smart about your search, whether it be for an internship or a job or just connecting with folks in the industry. So the Rally to Inspire Student Talent is a virtual event with sports industry professionals with rally to share lessons and advice, as I mentioned. And this event is the affiliate of the Sports Biz Talent Incubator Conference, which is going to be hosted tomorrow on the 22nd. And so Jeff and I will be co-hosting it, and we have 85 or 80 plus individuals who confirmed to participate in that day in panels and various breakout sessions. So we're really excited about that, and looking forward to our students to come away with a lot of great information and inspiration to help them with your sports career journeys. So just a quick blurb about our co-host. So I am a corporate recruiter and former college career advisor, and also creator of the Sports Industry Showcase, which we hosted last year, and the Sports Biz Talent Incubator hosting tomorrow. And Jeff Fellenser, who's my partner in crime, has been in the industry for a number of years. He's an entrepreneur, he's a sports media personality, and also a professor at USC's Edinburgh School for Communication and Journalism. And Jeff, not sure if you wanted to say hi or say anything at the moment.
Yeah. Thank you, Ron. Appreciate that. Hi, everybody. I just wanted to say welcome and thanks to all of our sports industry professionals, which include a couple of my former students. So it's really exciting for me, really, really excited. I want to thank Ron for just your great work and collaboration, passion, and vision in pulling this together and being able to link so many extraordinary people together for this program. I'm really excited. The hope is that you're going to hear some things out there that resonate. I have a feeling that you're going to hear more than just a few, and just keys to success and sort of what got some of the folks that you're going to see here where they are, lessons learned along the way, life lessons they can pass along to you guys, to everybody else, and just keys to success, things that you've really taken to heart and that you can pass along. So our hope is that we'll give some of our thoughts about putting students and young professionals in the best position to get the job that you want, to start down that path of working in sports. The hope is to give you a roadmap, help you start to build your profile and your network of contacts. And, someday you guys are going to be in a position to do the same thing to help the next generation, because any of us that have worked in sports have all been helped along the way by people that were selfless and really gave up their time. I had my sports business media class last night, and Scott Boras, the baseball agent, stayed for more than 2 hours after spending his afternoon at Dodger Stadium, came over to my class at night and waited and talked to every single student after the class that stayed around to talk to him and just meet him. We didn't leave the auditorium until after 10 o'clock.
Wow.
So I think sometimes just something as, it doesn't cost anything. It does in the sense that your time is very valuable, but I think for the students, and one of them told me just to see that someone like that would take the time to be here with us was really important. So I hope that message isn't lost, that everybody here taking their time to give back, and I hope you guys can get as much as possible out of this great group.
Terrific, Jeff. Thank you for sharing that too. And just appreciate your partnership in this, I think, very important work that we're doing here. All right, so let's go ahead and move on. So I just wanted to do a quick intro of several sports industry professionals who've invested their time in tonight. Unfortunately, Josh Feinberg from the athletics will not be able to make it. He had another obligation that came up, but just wanted to share that James Jordan, who's the senior manager for partnership sales for Rams, is here. Jason Andrea, senior vice president of corporate partnerships for Las Vegas Aces, is scheduled to be here. Joey Buskirk, Senior Manager of Club Media Strategy for the NFL, Juan Aguilera, Global Partnerships for Sports, Spurs, and Entertainment, Leila Messian, who's a Marketing Promotions Assistant for Clippers, and Nadia Kim, who's a Manager of Marketing, Sports and Live Programming for Peacock, and Seth Rubenroy, who's a Manager of Content Integrations and Audio for NBC Sports Group, and then last but not least, Shelby Jordan, Senior Project Manager for Legends. So we have quite a collection of individuals who showed up to be able to support you. And so we will hear from them a little later on. But I wanted just to let you know who's in the room. So I wanted to now turn the floor over to Jeff to introduce our guest speaker, Leonard Armato. Don't think he needs much of an introduction. But Jeff, I'm going to turn the floor over to you. And I just want to thank Leonard for carving out time. We're very honored to have you here and appreciate the heart that you have for paying it forward to the next generation of sports industry talent. So Jeff.
Great. Super. Thanks a lot, Ron. I consider Leonard Armato, besides being a good friend, to be a sports marketing and sports branding, sports business genius. Really a leader in this space and a visionary. I mean, we could talk about Leonard's career for an entire session and it wouldn't be nearly enough time. I'm so grateful that he's joining us today to tip off our event. I want to remind everybody that tomorrow we have it scheduled for 2:45. I'm going to have a more detailed conversation with Leonard about his career, and we're going to get to the subject of creating value for yourself. How do you do that? How do you sort of, what I always say, separate from the pack and stand out as you build toward career success? So we'll get into that specifically tomorrow. But for today's rally, wanted you guys to hear from a few of our very distinguished professionals about their thoughts and advice, keys to success, starting with Leonard. And I'll do a more detailed introduction tomorrow, but just to give you a few things, Leonard off the top here, founder CEO of Management Plus Enterprises. And he's involved in building and developing high growth brands, converging in the worlds of sports, entertainment, experiences, marketing, and technology. He's very active in the metaverse, NFT, Web 3.0 space. He's got some really exciting projects coming up. He just doesn't slow down. He was a leader in the early stages of the sports agent business. And coming out of law school, he played basketball first at USC and then went up to the University of Pacific with Stan Morrison, one of his USC coaches that was hired to be the head coach at UOP. Followed Stan up there, became an all-conference player, one of the best point guards and players in UOP history. Went to law school at University of San Diego, came out, and it was going to be his dream to try this idea of connecting with athletes and giving them proper representation, building their brands, and got off to a pretty good start. His first client was Ronnie Lott, the All-American safety at USC, Pro Football Hall of Famer. And then Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was his first basketball client. Shaquille O'Neal, he has a close relationship with Shaq. He's had a very influential role in Shaq's career, even to this day. Hakeem Olajuwon. He just understood at an early stage about the power that athletes have to be influencers and market leaders, building their brands in ways that transcended sports, entertainment, lifestyle, education, technology. He created the AVP Pro Beach Volleyball Tour, became a $40 million business within 5 years. And he was the chief marketing officer at Skechers. And it really helped it become the fastest growing footwear company in the world at one time, working with celebrities, Kim Kardashian, Mark Cuban, and sports stars like Joe Montana. So he always signs his emails warmly. And so with that, I'd like to give a warm welcome to my good friend, Leonard Armato. Leonard.
Wow, Jeff, thank you so much for that introduction. And from now on, whenever I speak, I'm going to put it in the contract that you have to give my introduction, because that was phenomenal. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, Leonard. I volunteer for that role going forward.
So, the purpose of today is to put myself in the place of all those students that are out there. Because when I was their age, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, with my career. My dad was a university professor at USC for 35 years. And, back when my dad was teaching, they didn't make the kind of big bucks that Professor Fellenzer makes today. They were very, very underpaid. But my dad would love to teach people, to provide information, to guide, to be of service. And he didn't even care about getting paid for it. And I watched him and I admired him and I thought, that's phenomenal what he does, but I want to get into a profession where I can do that, but also make a good living. So I figured I'd go to law school, because when you go to law school, you have a lot of different options. So I ended up going to law school and coming out, as Professor Fellenzer said, and I ultimately started representing athletes. But the first thing I want to kind of tell everyone here is that it's really important, no matter what you do, if it's representing athletes, it's working for a team, if it's in some other area of the sports business that just is really, really exciting to you, you have to find a career that you love that kind of aligns your mission in life and your passion so you can make money. And I like to sort of think of it in like 4 buckets, and I call them the 4 Ps. Number 1, whatever job you take or do, ultimately it has to feel like play, like something you would do no matter what. And if you're getting paid, of course, that's phenomenal, but it's got to be something that feels really good to you. Second thing is, that job has to have purpose. There's got to be a reason why you are doing this job. And you got to think about what you're doing, and if in your heart of hearts, you have purpose. The other thing that you need is the 3rd P, which is potential. Everyone here has a God-given potential, and it's your job to maximize that potential. And if your career is not allowing you to do that, it's time for a change. And then finally, and this is sort of a practical side of it, you got to be able to make money at what you do. So play, purpose, potential, get paid. It's really important to have all those components, and you'll have a career that you just really treasure, and it'll be something that you enjoy tremendously. Think of your life a little bit like a book with a series of chapters. For me, I started as a lawyer, and then I became an agent, then I became a sports marketer. And then as Professor Fellenzer said, I started the first lifestyle sport, and then the president of an athletic footwear company and brand manager. So there's lots of different chapters that your life might ultimately take. So just be sort of ready for the journey. And the thing that young people always talk to me about, and I'm sure a lot of you are feeling this at the moment, the world is a really scary place right now. I always sort of say, is this the best or worst of times? Because on one level you could think it's the best of times, on another level you could think it's the worst of times. And how do you navigate a world that's moving faster than it's ever moved in history, where there's no guarantees, where there's lots of opportunities, but they're quickly like going past you? And you probably have heard this, but information is doubling every single year. So you can't keep up with everything. So it causes a lot of people anxiety. And think about this. I know I could, there could be a show of hands. How many of you feel anxiety from time to time? I know you're all going to raise your hand. Yes, I do. And what does that do to you? What it does to you is it paralyzes you. You're unproductive because you just can't do anything, because you're just being consumed by this negative energy. On the other hand, if you're not feeling anxiety, if you're feeling empowered, confident, think about how when you walk into a room, you feel like you could talk to anybody, you could do anything. And that's when you're in your highest and best mental state. So how do you overcome fear and anxiety and put yourself in a position to operate at the highest state? There's a couple tools I'll give you that have worked for me. Number 1, you should live every moment in gratitude to the extent you can. I mean, it's really important every morning to just focus on things you're grateful for. Every night before you go to bed, think about what you have to give thanks for. There was a study at Harvard that said people that wrote down 3 things they were grateful for every day were more productive and happier than those that didn't. The other thing I would recommend to you is have a routine for your spirit, for your mind, for your body, and fill yourself with an enormous supply of positive energy, because energy is really interesting. It's infectious. If you have positive energy, you're going to affect people around you in a positive way. If you have negative energy, you'll suck the air right out of the room. And it happens over and over and over again. And if you put yourself in a position where you're surrounded by negative people, you will be dragged down into the vortex of what they want you to do. And it's something you don't want, because negative energy a lot of times is more powerful than positive energy. You know, there's been studies on that too. You have to almost have 5 times as much positive energy to overcome the same amount of negative energy. So think about that. The other thing I'll tell you is you should try to make each day a masterpiece. And, you know, the reason is this. If you think about, oh my gosh, I can't accomplish all this. Oh my goodness, there's so many daunting things in my life. You know what? Let's just compartmentalize what you have to accomplish in one single day. If you can make this day a masterpiece, if you can be your best self for the entire day, the rest of it will take care of itself. Be fully engaged in every moment. And then the final thing is, in this world where everything is changing so darn fast, you have to accept not knowing. You have to accept being uncomfortable, but you always have to have a curiosity that will drive you to learn and drive you to be better and drive you to accomplish more than you even thought you could. So, and there's a couple more things I just want to kind of share with you, and then I'll talk a little bit about sports and my career. But if you want to live a long, happy, successful life, one thing I will tell you is key, and that is relationships. And Professor Fellenzer can tell you, and Ron can tell you, that relationships are so critical. And Harvard did a study on relationships, and it was so interesting what the study showed. The study was about what is it that is the most important factor in longevity, a long life. And most people would think, well, if you don't smoke, you probably live longer. If you eat well, you probably live longer. Well, if you don't worry too much, you don't have too much anxiety, you'll live longer. And what they discovered is the single most important factor in determining longevity is relationships. The nature and scope of your relationships, so you have the desire to live, to maintain those relationships. Personal with your family, business, but also even the local people that you don't know that well, like the barista at Starbucks. All those relationships, those make up what's most important in living a long life, which is kind of crazy, but it's true. And another thing that Harvard did in the way of a study was about achievement. And you may have heard about this because there's a big TED Talk on it. And they tried to identify the keys to success. And what they found is the keys to success, or the most important key, is not the relationships you have that you can network and turn into like business opportunities. It's not your intuition, it's not your aptitude, but it's something called grit. The willingness to persevere through adversity to achieve your goals. And I found a lot of really average people are super successful because they have grit. So everyone can be successful if you just want it badly enough. And then, the final thing I'll leave you with on this area of, how to be successful is a performance study that was done by another institution. And you'll love this because it really shows you how important it is to be around great people. So what happened is they got a classroom of average students, and they told a professor, "You are teaching geniuses." And the professor listened and said, "Oh, wow." They took a classroom of geniuses. They told the professor, "You're teaching average students here." At the end of a month, they compared performance. The average students did better than the geniuses. Why? Because of the way they were treated, because of what the person that was teaching them believed about them. So it's so important to be around people that inspire you, that believe in you, that make you stretch your capabilities beyond what you ever thought you could do. Anyway, so let's talk about, Professor Fellenzer mentioned value proposition, or what is it that's important that you have that's unique and special. And I'll tell you, you should write this down, because your value proposition is something you're going to carry with you the rest of your life, and it will always be changing. And I'll tell you the story of how I got my first client. And Professor Fellenzer, if you heard this story, I'm sorry, I'm going to tell it again, but it's going to be relatively short. I'll give you the short version. So, as Professor Fellenzer said, my basketball coach in college was Stan Morrison. And when he was at USC, he had a player on his team, on the basketball team, named Ronnie Lott. And Ronnie, of course, was an incredible football player at USC, All-American, first-round pick and all that, but he also played basketball. So when I was trying to get into the sports business, Stan said, let me set you up with a meeting with Ronnie Lott and see if you can convince him to have you represent him. Now, keep in mind, I was out of law school. I had no clients. I'd just gone out on my own, no experience whatsoever in the business. So I got this meeting with Ronnie Lott. We sat down and he said, well, I'm having this meeting because Coach Morrison said I should, but I'm being recruited by all the top agents in the world. So let me just ask you 3 questions. And I said, okay. He said, number 1, how many clients do you have? And you all know I had none. I said, I don't have any clients, Ronnie. And the second question he said was, well, tell me the achievements that you have under your belt in the sports area so I can feel more confident that you're the kind of person that I can believe in as my agent. And I said, well, I don't have any accomplishments so far. I understand the mentality of an athlete. I'm very determined. I'm very excited to do this. And he said, okay. And he said, is there anybody that you're working with that might be able to shore up the fact you got no experience and no clients? And he says, and I said, no, I'm on my own, but really and truly, I can do a great job for you. And he said, look, I think we probably need to end the meeting. It's nice to meet you. You seem like a nice guy, but obviously you're not qualified. I said, wait a minute, before you end the meeting, and I want everybody here to think about this. That seemed like a disastrous meeting, right? I mean, yes, raise your hand, disaster, right? Jason, raise your hand. I know it's a disaster in your mind too. So listen, I just sat there and I was praying, God, tell me what to do here because I'm in big trouble. So all of a sudden I got this like lightning bolt flash. Let me ask you 3 questions, Ronnie, before I go. And he said, okay. I said, the first question is, what do you want to accomplish on the football field? And he said, well, I'm going to be an all-pro in the NFL. I said, wow, that's a great goal. I said, well, what do you want to accomplish off the field? He said, well, I want to be a successful businessman. I want to own car dealerships, because at the time, car dealerships were the sign of an athlete being successful. And I said, well, how do you want to be remembered? He said, I want to help kids. I want to give back to the community. I want to be remembered as somebody that really made my community better. And I said, those are unbelievable goals. Those are amazing goals. And I just want you to think about one thing, Ronnie. All these fancy agents that are recruiting you, those fancy agents have 30, 40, 50 clients each. And if they treat everybody equally, they'll be able to give them like 6 minutes of attention a day. 6 minutes of attention a day is not going to help you accomplish the goals that you need, that you aspire to, those beautiful goals you just outlined for me. And he just sort of sat there for a second. I said, but me, on the other hand, I could give you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year on yours and your goals alone. And he just sort of sat there and he said, yeah, that sounds great, but I don't believe that you can do the job. And I said, look, let me make you an offer you can't refuse. I'll work for you for free for 30 days. And if at the end of 30 days, you don't believe in me, that I'm the best person for the job, you can shake my hand, I'll walk away, and you'll have absolutely no obligation. And he sat there for a minute. He said, that sounds really interesting. Maybe you should talk to my parents about that. So I said, yes, give me their number. So I got the number of his parents. I said, Mr. and Mrs. Lott, your son wants me to meet with you and talk to you about a proposition I've made him. And they said, come on out. And I drove out to Rialto, California, which is out near San Bernardino, about an hour away from USC. Sat down with them, Mr. and Mrs. Lott, I'm going to work for your son for 30 days for free to prove myself. What do you think? And they looked at each other and they said, what a nice young man who believes in himself and really wants to prove what he can do. I said, are you on board with this? And they said, absolutely. So I called Ronnie. I said, your parents say, let's do it. 30 days, I'm going to show you. Anyway, long story short, after 30 days, he wasn't quite sure. After 60 days, he was a little more sure. And after 90 days, he finally signed with me. So this is the moral of the story. My value proposition at the time was 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year for you and you alone. Now, remember, that had to change as time went on, because after I got Ronnie a great contract, I had like 12 of the San Francisco 49ers by the next year as clients. So when I met with Shaquille O'Neal, and I'm fast forwarding a bit here just to kind of give you an idea. When I met with Shaq, my value proposition couldn't be, you're my only client. So my value proposition was, Shaq, you see what Michael Jordan's done. He's the greatest endorser in the history of sports. But you know what we're going to do? We're going to do something different. We're going to do something better. We're going to own our own intellectual property. We're going to own your brand. He doesn't own his brand. He makes money, but he doesn't own his brand. You're going to own your brand, and we're going to get a coalition of companies to spend their money to build your brand into something valuable and powerful. And so that was my pitch to him, which ultimately ended up getting me Shaquille O'Neal as a client. And you've all seen what's happened with his brand over the years. Obviously, it's grown, it's been incredible, and it was a really fun, interesting thing. One other thing I want to talk to you about is just what it takes to build a sports property and the importance of culture. Culture is really important in anything you do, in any job you have, in any company you build. And when I started the sport of pro beach volleyball, we wanted to build a culture around healthy, active lifestyle. And so it was like a sport, but it was also a lifestyle, which was something that everybody embraced and everybody believed in. And the idea behind culture is, you're passionate about it. You're aligned with others around it. You're connected to others around it, and everybody feels empowered. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. You're part of something bigger. Kind of, if you believe in the why, you'll be willing to do the what. You've probably heard that before, but it's very, very, very true. Now, as we move into today's world, I wanted to talk just for a second about my experience at Skechers, because Skechers was a company that only did traditional advertising, print ads, TV ads, that's it. And the owner, Robert Greenberg, didn't believe in digital, didn't believe in social media. And I had to kind of convince him that this is the way of the future. And I said, there's this little known influencer out there that I think we could use in our mass market advertising to combine mass media, TV, print, and all those other kinds of advertising with social media. And I finally convinced him. He bought a Super Bowl ad and we merged the two. And the name of the person that we did it with was someone you may have heard of. Her name's Kim Kardashian. You heard that name? I'm sure you guys have heard it. She has the largest social following in the world. But that convergence of mass and social media was a really interesting thing. And now it's gone to the whole next level, because we are now entering what they call the creator economy, where individuals can go directly to consumers with their brand in ways that they never have before. I mean, the Kardashians have all done it very successfully. And there's this new area that's growing called the metaverse, Web3, along with NFTs. And many of you are probably familiar with that. But now every brand is looking to NFTs as the future of their loyalty program. So we're working with a lot of companies now in what their metaverse strategy should be, what their NFT strategy should be. And this is in sports and outside of sports. Shaquille asked us to help his, and you probably heard of this as well, college students can now make money under the NIL. And that means they can profit off their name, image, and likeness for the first time. So he asked us to represent his kids who are all in college or in high school. And we took his oldest son, Sharif O'Neal, and we created a really interesting NFT trading card for him and with him, telling his story. You may not know this, but he went through open heart surgery and to repair a heart defect, and came out of it. And now he's, trying to relaunch his basketball career, and everybody's watching and rooting for him. But through these digital assets like trading cards, we started to realize how powerful NFTs are, and started advising a lot of companies in the space around that. Now, circling back to sports, I know a lot of you are interested in a career in sports. Maybe you know what you want to do, maybe you don't. But what I would suggest that you do is that you become, or at least apply for, an internship with whatever part of the business that you believe you want to be in. The reason this is such a good idea is it doesn't matter if you're getting paid at the beginning, because remember, I didn't get paid, with Ronnie Lott when I was proving myself. What matters is that you'll get firsthand experience to know whether, this qualifies as a career that you're going to be passionate about, that serves your purpose, that fulfills your potential, that allows you to get paid. And if it doesn't check all those boxes, you might want to pivot to another part of the sports business that does just that. So just kind of to, recap everything. It's really important in your life, whether you're in sports or outside of sports, to sort of live in gratitude, value the importance of relationships, be committed to making every day a masterpiece, be optimistic with positive energy. And one of the quotes I love is from Aristotle, which is, excellence is not a single act, it's a habit. You are what you repeatedly do. You got to be consistent. And the last thing I want to leave you with is this. At MPE, at our company, we created a manifesto. It's like a North Star, the way our lives are governed at the company. And I'm going to read it to you, and that's how I'm going to end this. And this is our MPE manifesto. Our chief aim is to improve the lives of others and enable greatness in everyone and everything we touch. We inspire each other by working with remarkable people on remarkable things and setting a clear vision for what success looks like. We strive to operate with flawless dependability and exceed expectation. We're best in the world at using innovation and disruptive new models to build personal and lifestyle brands, maximize potential, and move culture in a positive way, creating a culture of excellence, transparency, empowerment, and inclusivity. We are a purpose-driven organization that looks to lead with compassion, not judgment, humility, not ego, and love, not fear. Thank you. That is my little talk to you today. I hope it resonated with some of you. And if you have anything you want to follow up with, let me know.
Leonard, phenomenal. I've worn out my right hand here trying to take all the notes that popped into mind as you were speaking. You hit on a couple things that are really important to me. Just gratitude. I sign a lot of my emails like you do warmly with just gratefully. So it's awesome to hear you prioritize that word. Make each day your masterpiece is my favorite quote from Coach Wooden. It actually came from his dad, given to him as a young boy on a farm in Indiana. And just about curiosity. Your former client Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is showing incredible journalistic curiosity these days as he writes so wonderfully for Substack. I encourage everybody to subscribe to Kareem's essays, which are posted weekly. And just the importance of relationships. It's so critical in sports. As we always say, sports is a very non-linear career path. So it's all about connecting with people and building your network. And and taking advantage of the opportunities when they come. And everything that you said are things that will give anybody a chance to put themselves in the best position to get the job they want. You know, patience for you was huge because, my gosh, you had 3 months of working for free for Ronnie Lott. I mean, that's patience. It wasn't like, you know, hey, if I'm not getting paid within a couple of weeks, I'm out of here. It was like, no, you had to essentially you were an intern for those 3 months coming out of law school.
Jeff, it wasn't patience. It was flying without a safety net, because I didn't mention this, but I was about to run out of my last dime. I didn't know I was going to make my car payment. I didn't know how I was going to make my rent payment. And I had a temporary assistant who ultimately ended up working for me for 25 years, but I didn't know I was going to pay her. And at the end of 90 days, I didn't let Ronnie know this, but I don't want to say sweating bullets, but I was sort of at the end. So you never know, you know, when, you know, God's going to send you down a miracle, because, you know, you just have to believe.
You do. You have to believe. You've got to believe in yourself. And it's hard to do that in your early stages of a career, because you don't have, you know, necessarily success stories to fall back on. Now, I think in Leonard, in your case, just your success in college basketball as a player, I'm sure that helped a lot, or graduating from law school. So whatever it is whatever success you've had and something that showed belief in yourself to reach a goal, sometimes is what you have to really, you know, like have in your personal bank to draw from. So, you know, just really great and wonderful words of advice and inspiration. Ron, I would love to get our other guests involved. I want to keep this interactive, so if students have questions, we can get at them along the way. But at the same time, I want to open up our discussion to include our other guests. So feel free here.
All right, terrific. Well, Leonard, thank you very much again. And you just captured the spirit of what we're trying to accomplish here. You know, we're trying to inspire our students, and obviously with great information to substantiate the inspiration. And so we're fortunate to have some other industry folks who've carved out some time to join us as well. And so this is going to be free flowing. And so it's not as much structure, but I just want to give our industry folks just an opportunity just to, you know, take a moment, or, you know, a little longer, and, you know, share just, you know, any lessons, any advice that you want to impart to our students who are here. And so we got a number of folks here who have lots of experience in the industry. So I'm opening the floor up to whoever wants to jump in and get started. And you can piggyback on anything you heard Leonard say, or you can come up with something that already was in your heart. So whoever wants to take the floor, feel free.
Hello, everyone. I know Leonard called me out on the presentation about see him from his Ronnie Lott presentation. So I'll jump in here. The reason I didn't raise my hand is because one of the biggest things for me is transparency. You were very honest with him in that moment, right? And it's a moment of weakness, but also a moment of strength, basically how you turned it around. So it's one of the biggest things that we preach here is transparency. I'm on the partnership space of this industry, and for me, that's what's been super important for me. But as a college student, I was told as an undergrad, and then also as a grad student, the first thing you need to do is work in sports, because to Leonard's point, you got to start early to figure out what you want to do and what you don't want to do. And if you're willing to put in the time, which, as I'm sure everyone on this call knows, it's more than you would think. So you have to really, truly have a passion for what you do every day. And I'm going to steal another one of Leonard's comments, but curious for me is the biggest thing that I look for when we look for individuals that we're going to bring on board. Because if you're not asking the questions, I can't help you answer them. So if you're not curious and you're not looking for the next thing, if you're not looking for, you know, something that's might not be in your purview, you might be in ticketing and have an interest in partnerships. My door is always open, right? It's like, if you don't ask the questions, you'll never know the answers. It's the whole sales mantra of, if you don't ask for the sale, you'll never get the sale. So that's just the little thing for me. Jason Andrea, the Senior Vice President at the Las Vegas Aces of the WNBA. Hello, nice to meet everybody.
Jason, thank you for getting us off to a great start with those comments. And I want to encourage industry professionals, if you are feel comfortable, if you want to put your information in the chat, there's no obligation to do so. But if you're open to students reaching out to you, feel free to do so. And I would encourage each of you, we could just go ahead and just toss your name in the chat, just so we know, students, we know where you're from too. But thank you, Jason. So who else wants to chime in?
Hey guys, I can go. Joey Buskirk, Senior Manager, Club Media Strategy for the NFL. Ultimately, what I do is I work with very closely with all 32 clubs on how they can optimize their digital and social platforms. Keeps it interesting. 32 very, very drastically different markets. But the reason why I wanted to jump in, I had this whole list of things that I was going to bring up and talk about, but I was really inspired by what Leonard talked about. And I didn't expect to feel this way going into this. But I feel kind of moved to share my personal story a little bit. I'll keep it pretty brief, but this isn't really something I share in a professional setting. But I felt moved to do so. So I was an agricultural business major, got into sports, obvious connection. It just shows that anything's possible. But straight from college, got a 7-month contract here at the NFL. It was supposed to be pretty short-lived, and about 6 months before I got the job, my mom passed away, right in my senior year of college. And obviously that was one of the hardest things I had to go through in my life. And I was 22 years old. We were incredibly close. And anyway, I started at the league. I was working through my grief, but I was pouring myself into the job, and I was doing great, got a full-time job, was rising up the ranks. And a couple years in, I started to battle some depression and some addiction issues that I was not open about, that I was not honest about with myself or others. And I plateaued, and I was still working at the league. And I was battling some really difficult stuff internally. And I actually ended up, this is hard for me to bring up. I've never talked about this before. So I decided to go on medical leave and took 4 months off and did some heavy personal work to get back to, where I wanted to be. And I never thought that I would come back to the NFL after leaving. My ego told me no. I was thinking about what's next. I wanted a fresh start. I didn't want to have to look at people in the eyes after taking time for myself and explain myself. And the moral of the story is I ended up doing it, and I came back, and I'm still at the league, and I've been able to not only get back to where I was, but continue to rise. And now I'm in a place where I feel completely re-energized. I have an incredible supportive team. I've been able to learn so many different areas of the business, all the while, being an NFL employee. And if you would have told me that this would be my story, like going out, starting back up again, all the while I've been able to be an NFL employee, I wouldn't have believed you. And so I guess the point of my story is, like, it is not linear. And we said that, like, your career is not linear. Grief is not linear. It's not this specific path that you can see from a mile away. You develop your own story. And I loved what you said, Leonard, that life is all about relationships. My mom used to say that to me all the time. So I got to feel that in my heart. And then you said the words grit too on the opposite end. And for me to go through what I went through and to come back, it took a lot of grit. And I had a lot of people that inspired me and helped me build that part of myself. But, like, life is brutal, but it's also beautiful. And grit is an incredible thing to have. It's absolutely necessary if you want to continue growing as an individual. So, I really didn't plan on I'm getting a little choked up. I didn't plan on really bringing this up at all, because it's a personal thing that sometimes people can look down on. But it's my story, and I don't know if it could help other people, but that's what I felt inspired to say. I'm here if any of you guys want to reach out. I love working with kids that are getting into sports. Lots of opportunities for you guys. in this realm. And I'll drop my info in the chat. Happy to hear from you guys whenever you'd like. So thanks so much.
Hey, that was a great story, Joey. I'm so glad that I somehow touched a chord and that somehow allowed you to share this, because you can just see in the chat you've impacted a lot of people just by doing and saying what you did. So God bless.
Yeah. And if I could just chime in, Joey, thank you so much. I just want to honor and thank you for this. And this is why we do the work we do. People like you who are passionate enough about helping these kids that you are going to open up. So like that, I'm moved as well. I'm getting a little bit emotional. The fact that you took that risk to do this. And this is what we want to do. We want to go beneath the surface, because it is tough. Your life is beautiful and it's brutal too. And we want to be able to inspire the young people just to be able to work through their challenges, whatever they may be, as they move along their career path, whether it be into sports or not. So I just thank you so much for that. And I'm glad you joined us. And you're definitely you're going to be my inner circle of allies now, people like you who are willing to show that part because you're so committed. We will definitely be talking more and getting more involved in what we're doing here.
And I'll just add, Joey, thank you for speaking from the heart. It was really moving as somebody raised by a single mom and losing her unexpectedly a little bit later in life than what happened to you. But it really resonated with me because, and as an only child too, she kind of was everything. So to be able to speak openly, honestly, and authentically about that, what you went through, and being able to persevere and overcome the obstacles. We all have them in different forms. I think it's really important that that your colleagues and this audience hears that. And thank you for sharing. Does anybody like Layla, Nadia, Wong? We don't have to go in any order. Just anything that you guys wanted to share that that has come to mind as you listen to our discussion so far.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. I can't quite follow that up, Joey, but I appreciate you so much for sharing. On my own end, Joey and I worked together at the NFL recently. And I think the one thing I want to share when we are talking about relationships is the fact that when I jumped into this Zoom chat, I'm a little bit younger in my career, a little unsure, Asian woman in this industry, felt a little bit shaky, jumping into this room, but I jumped in and I immediately noticed a bunch of faces that I'd worked with actually through so many phases in my sports career. Shelby Jordan, who I met when I started my very first job in sports, actually 1 year out of USC. He and I we weren't on the same team, but we happened to sit in the same area, and to see him now jobs later where he is, it's incredible to see that. And then of course, Joey, who I was just recently with after 4 years at the NFL, to hear that side of him that, I could always tell he was a great guy. We connected really greatly on a project that we did that also wasn't on the same team, but to see him here open up and kind of learn that new side of him, that's super, super heartening. And then of course, Seth, who's my colleague over at NBCU now, who I actually was connected to through his brother who works at the NFL. So when you say that the sport industry is all about relationships, and it's very small, I think I'm kind of, seeing it right now, really an example of that, right? Especially in Los Angeles, this really is a very close-knit industry and we all want to help. That's the biggest, that's why all of us are here, where we've got SVPs taking time out of their day to speak to you all. It's really because we do care and we know how hard it is. We know what it's like to be in an industry where, there is probably 500 applications to every one job, right? That's very, very daunting. So I think the fact that you guys are even here today, logging in, listening to all of us go off on this is just really step number one. And I think, touching on a little bit of a different side, as a woman in sports and as an Asian woman in sports too, I think one of the biggest things I want to share with other women who are on here with me today is the fact that for a lot of us, there's a bit of imposter syndrome, right? I'm hit with it all the time. I'm sure all the other people have been in those same shoes too. And I think as a woman, I'll share one example recently where I'd worked for the NFL for 4 years. I came over to Peacock just in December, and we were getting the Super Bowl for the very first time on our platform, which was super exciting. I was in a meeting with a bunch of new colleagues on the sports side who had never met before. And a female colleague of mine had shared, that she'd heard on the radio that Joe Burrow could be the very first quarterback to take his team to not only win a Heisman, of course, and win the national championship as he'd already done, but also the Super Bowl. And she shared this fact in the chat, which I was like, wow, that's really cool. It's great to hear that. And immediately, unexpectedly, there had been another colleague on there who kind of dogpiled and said, I don't think that's actually true. I'm pretty sure Marcus Allen was the first player to do that, actually. And, everyone else thumbs up and we're like, yeah, that's right. That sounds more right, et cetera, et cetera. And, again, I'd worked in the sport for many years, but I also went to USC. So I was like, I know Marcus Allen. I know who he is. I know this doesn't sound right to me. But I second guessed myself. I Googled after and I was like, maybe I don't really know what I know. Maybe I'm not as knowledgeable as I thought I was, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm just doing that now because, as you go through this industry, there's a lot of, people who've grown up sports fanatics since birth, right? There's a whole gamut. There's those of us who, like Joey and myself, stumbled a little bit more into sports. My biggest thing is don't let other people's journeys and their knowledge and all of that kind of take away from your own confidence in it, what what you're passionate about and all that good stuff. After that instance happened in the meeting, I had actually had the opportunity in another meeting with the same group of people to kind of clear the air because my colleague who'd mentioned that stat and had immediately been dogpiled on as it being wrong, she brought it up again, like, oh guys, I'm so sorry. I said that. I thought I'd heard the right thing on the radio. And, I'd taken that moment to speak up and say like, no, you're right. You said that he's the first quarterback, which he was. Marcus Allen might've been the first running back to do it and all of that. But I think it's, just be confident in yourself. You know what you know. And I think that's kind of the biggest thing that I want to impart as you guys enter this field. It's a scary field to be in, every one step that you take, because, there is this feeling that everyone else wants your job and everyone else, would like to be in your shoes, that it's easy to get tripped up by these things. Just don't. If you're a good person and you know what you know and you put the hard work in, I promise that there will be results. So kudos to all of you guys for being on here. I know I wasn't doing this when I was in college too. So that's just one leg up you guys have on me already. So there we go.
Thank you so much, Nadia. And it's glad to have you. I've been chasing Nadia for a little bit, to get involved. And so glad we got you in here, and terrific stuff just about relationships and also confidence as well. Thank you.
So who else? Yeah.
I can jump in, guys.
Yeah.
Hey, James.
I can kind of segue, Nadia teed me up nicely. Kind of a point that I'd written down kind of leading into this meeting was kind of the idea and the notion of betting on yourself. And kind of Nadia kind of highlighted this imposter syndrome type complex. And I think to her point, it's something that we all go through, right? I mean, speaking for myself, I sit here and I'm like, wow, if you can't tell, I'm originally from London, if you can't tell by the accent. And obviously now out here in Los Angeles, and almost every day I find myself pinching myself saying, like, why on earth am I in this role now? Sitting here, got sized for a Super Bowl ring last week, having just won the Super Bowl in a stadium that I spent 4 years of my life working on. And Shelby on this call was a colleague of mine during that process. So as we talk about relationships and the sports industry being so small, it truly is. So going back to my point around betting on yourself, I think within our industry, it's easy and it's the norm for folks coming up to think that I want to work for my favorite team, or I want to work within the NBA. So what's the NBA team in the city that I live in? I think typically it doesn't quite work out like that. And I think if you look at especially senior folks within the sports industry, very rarely do you find individuals that have spent their entire careers within one city. Oftentimes you have to move to where the opportunity is. And I'm an example of that. I was living in New York. I got to grad school at St. John's. I was actually working for NBC. Nadia, I used to work for NBCSN. Obviously you're on the new forefront of that now, but during my time in New York, I wanted to stay there. It was the most similar city that I had found at that point to London, which was home, and I never saw myself leaving. Through an internship that I had previous to entering grad school at Major League Soccer, I developed a relationship that kind of evolved into a mentorship with an individual that was working for the Legends at the time. He knew I wanted to get out of kind of traditional media and back into sports sponsorship. And he called me one day and said, "Hey, James, there's this project that's kind of known about in LA, pretty under the radar, but it's going to be special. It's going to be more than your typical sports stadium. I think you should interview for a role there." So I said, okay. So I kind of went through the process. And like I said, at the time I was in New York and Legends have an office downtown. So I was going down, interviewing, wasn't quite sure if I even wanted to move to LA, let alone I know anything about the project and kind of the scope of what Hollywood Park has become. But went through the process, obviously eventually was offered a role to come out here. And I'd never stepped foot in the state of California until the day I moved here to work. And my wife she's forensic psychology, and she just passed her licensing in New York. That license didn't transfer to California. I was taking a massive pay cut to come out here.
Yeah, I did. I called in. I'm on the phone. I'm probably gonna hop.
Sorry, Lexi, I think you're off mute. But my point being is, on paper, it looked like a terrible decision to make. But I had a trusted network of sports industry professionals that were far more tenured than myself. And after spending countless hours and evenings calling them to make sure that I was making the right decision and trusting in my gut, I said, "You know what, Jen's my wife." I said, "This may go downhill, but I believe that we're making the right decision here. And I think it's going to lead to great things." And I think you've all seen what SoFi Stadium's become. And at the time I was working for Legends, and if you're familiar with Legends' role, especially on the sponsorship side, typically we enter projects, monetize kind of the most marquee assets, naming rights, big founding partnerships. And then there's a period where you transition off of the project and the team and the property take over. So I knew when I moved out to LA, I knew I had probably, let's say, 3 years of guaranteed employment. And then beyond that, it was unknown. And I had uprooted my wife from California. So her license in New York was now invalid if we went back. Like, I was really making a big bet. And so I really put my head down for a few years, knew that I needed to make this work, developed amazing relationships with both NFL teams I was working with, both the Chargers and the Rams. And then when the time came where I was really ready for a new role, it was one phone call that I made to the Rams and said, "Hey guys, like, this is really what I want to do. I'm committed to being in this market." At this point, they'd worked with me for years, knew me personally, and offered me a role. So the genesis and then the reason why I wanted to kind of share that with you is to say, even if you're looking at opportunity and saying, "You know what, I'm taking a massive risk here, and if this doesn't work out, it's going to be terrible," you have to bet on yourself. You really do. You have to believe in yourself. You have to take the opportunity, and the fairy tale dream can come true. And I'm an example of that. And like I said, sitting in SoFi Stadium, watching the Rams lift the Lombardi was truthfully something that I never thought I would experience. And Shelby, I know you probably felt the same way, but it was a dream we spoke about for many years, saying, "Hey, maybe one of our teams makes the Super Bowl at SoFi in 2022. Lo and behold, one of them did, and the Rams ended up winning it. So it's been a journey, but I would say be persistent, be flexible, and bet on yourself. And relationships are key. The same things that you hear over and over again are the truest. And I think we're all testament to that, the list of names that you see on this screen.
Yeah,
Very
Great stuff.
I'll jump in, backpack on that one. And to James's point, yeah, watching what transpired last season in SoFi was nothing but a dream, to say the least. Couldn't have worked out better, especially after coming out of COVID. So Shelby Jordan with Legends on the project development side. So kind of a unique space that really isn't that massive in the industry, but we're kind of on the forefront of each project. We go in, we'll help out from an entitlement, design, development standpoint, all the way to turnkey. And then we pass the keys off to whoever's going to run that building. Had the fortunate pleasure of working on the SoFi Stadium project, and nothing but a joy, to say the least. And look, there's nothing that I could say that trumps what you guys have already heard today from Leonard and the rest of the team here. everything that they said, like, take it to heart. The relationships are super key in this space. Like, to give context, and I will date myself, I've known Ron since the late 90s when I was a student at SC and spending time in the Career Center. I've known Jeff since I took his class in 2001. And Jeff, like the other day when I saw you, I came back and I'm looking at it right now. I still have notes from that class. You had Bill Plaskey, you had Shelly Smith, you had Arnie Wexler, you had Keyshawn Johnson, you had Jim Lampley, like, still have those notes. So it's amazing, like, some of the things you'll do early in life that will resonate later on and still keep value. It is so important to maintain those relationships. Like, even if it's simply just dropping an email or putting a thank you card or, you know, a quick text message to somebody to keep that dialogue going. I think the world's definitely evolved. Obviously, the connectivity and how we all stay connected has definitely improved and engaged. But, like, the little things and how you stay connected with people matter. You know, writing a letter is kind of becoming a lost art, but it means something when somebody gets that in the mail. It's so little things. I guess the one thing from my perspective and my experience, and I had a unique transition coming out of school, playing basketball at USC, not nearly to the level that Leonard was at. I sat on the end of the bench. My wife jokes she got more floor time than me because she was on the dance force, and she did. But I was fortunate enough to meet some people very early on and joined a group called AEG when AEG was really in its infancy stages back in 2000. Started as an intern. And I think that key word that the teams expressed today, grit, like, showed up, you know, made a conscious decision that instead of having fun senior year, I was going to go to work senior year, and it paid off. And that turned into a fabulous 16-year run with that organization before I came over to Legends, and have had the opportunity to work on some amazing stadiums in both companies. But a lot of it came down to showing up on a daily basis and showing that you're committed to what Jason said earlier, asking questions. Like, be curious. At the end of the day, that's how you're going to learn, and that's how you're going to grow. Showing up and just punching the clock and doing the same thing day in, day out, expect the same results. Like, you're not going to improve. But when you push the envelope, when you engage with your peers, when you engage with your executives, they're going to want to spend the time. They're trying to grow a business. They're trying to grow in an industry. They're going to want people on that team that are there to devote themselves and be attentive and to show up day in, day out and wanting to do more. So look, you've got to have a balance to what Leonard was talking about, but you also have to make a commitment. This isn't, when you get into the sports and entertainment world, it's not a 9-to-5 job. Usually it's hours that are rare and often inconsistent, to say the least. And you've got to be able to make decisions and prioritize where you want to be. Still need to make sure you keep that balance in life, but you also need to understand you're going to have to commit and probably give up some things that you normally would have been comfortable with, knowing that those sacrifices are going to pay off later on down the line. But yeah, I would say relationships. When you meet people, develop those relationships, cultivate them, value them. You never know who that person is. You never know where that person might be going and what doors and opportunities keeping those relationships fresh might open for you.
That was great, Shelby. I appreciate that. Thanks for the nice words too. By the way, I can still remember where you sat in my class. Like, you made an impression. Now, you know, probably being 6'8" didn't hurt, but I knew where you sat. And it's funny, I think about be at your best when no one is watching, and you may be in situations where you have no idea that somebody is watching, but you know, you notice things like somebody that is focused and ready to learn. And I see that in my classroom with certain students. And I always felt like you brought your A game to class, and it's continued through your career. So those were little things that you may not have known in a big class that I could see what was going on, even where you were. So thanks, everything you said about relationships and staying on. One of my sessions tomorrow includes staying in touch, and you hit on it. How to just continue to build relationships, and just in just small ways, like a quick note, quick text, quick email, something like that. We're going to get into that more tomorrow. So I'd love to pivot to Seth, another one of my favorite former students, and who's done some great things running the head of the podcast network at NBC, and a frequent guest in my class, and now a guest speaker in my class. So Seth, welcome.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that warm welcome. Wow. I mean, I'm just, Ron, Jeff, I've really got to thank you. Like, I know that I'm like an industry panelist here, but I really feel like I'm one of the students just hearing everybody's incredible stories. I've been so inspired. I'm taking a ton of notes. I mean, Joey's got me over here almost tearing up. Everybody's story is just been so incredible. And Leonard, you know, I work at NBC, and I've done a lot of work with the FIVB. So I'm really deep in the beach volleyball community, and you're somebody I've always looked up to. So I really enjoyed kind of hearing your talk, and a lot of what you said really resonated with me. I think the thing that I took away from your speech, Leonard, was energy. I mean, that's something that I always really try and bring to every situation. Is it makes such a difference. You know, someone now that interviews people for jobs and stuff like that. I think that's the biggest differentiator, because I get so many people that are extremely qualified, but I feel like I have to kind of bring out the energy of them in the interview. And I know if I've got to do that in the interview, then they're going to be the type of person that is going to expect me to assign them projects and stuff like that, when, you know, I certainly don't have time to do that. I need people to be go-getters and do it themselves and bring that energy. So I think that's really key. And, you know, even to hearing Jeff say that he remembered where Shelby sat. I mean, that's something that it shows just, you know, 20 years later, he remembers that, and that how that made a big difference. You know, that's what I'd recommend, like everybody who joins these kind of calls and leaves their camera off and stuff like that. It makes all the difference. If someone can see you, you're in the front row. I mean, that's the title of Jeff's podcast. The front row is, you know, always trying to do that. And that's something that I've always tried to do. When I joined NBC, you know, a similar story to Joey, where I had a contract, moved to Connecticut, didn't know anybody, kind of knew my clock was ticking. So as soon as I hit the ground, really just, I felt that kind of pressure to do it. And, you know, at a lot of these types of things, the advice you kind of hear over and over is work hard. And absolutely, you have to do that. But I think when a lot of people hear work hard, they think, okay, I've got to put my head down, work really hard. And that is important, but you also have to kind of lift your head up at times and, you know, talk to that person next to you in the meeting. Don't just pull your phone out right away. Ask that person, you know, how their kids are, because all that stuff is really how you build those relationships. So like, just kind of a small tangible way I would do that is, I'm a morning person. I love getting to the office early to kind of get through the emails, get the right start of the day, because a lot of people that just show up right at 9, they're flustered. There's been a bunch of emails. Their commute was crazy, and they just, you know, have to get right to work and figure out what they're doing. I've already kind of had that head start to the day, so that when those people start coming in, I can, you know, chit chat with them, get to know them. And that's kind of built the way to a lot of the opportunities I've had. So yeah, that's just a long way of saying I think energy is really important. And I'll put my my contact in the chat, and always happy to kind of elaborate on anything I'm doing now. If anybody has any questions about the Olympics, audio, NBC, really anything else. Thank you.
That's great, Seth. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. I think you make a really good point about just kind of staying organized and arriving early gives you a little bit of a head start. I mean, those are little things that turn into big things. So thank you for that. Is Layla able to weigh in? Yeah.
She mentioned that she's going to be in and out. She's traveling. She's going to try to pop in.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. So this would be a great time. I wanted to, you know, Ron and I both wanted to keep this as interactive as possible. So for anybody out there among the students, attendees of the conference, of this session, feel free, raise your hand, or even just jump right in. And any questions or thoughts, anything that you'd like to share that's maybe happened, in your life that you think might be of value that you would want to share. Go ahead. We'd like to hear from you too. What do you have any questions or thoughts? Or Julia, great, one of my current students. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? I apologize for not being on camera. I had practice earlier, so I'm not looking my best right now. But anyways,
no
I guess I had a question for kind of whoever, but especially talking about marketing and innovation and staying on top of trends, since a lot of you have been in the industry for so long. Yeah, how do you adopt these trends and then know how to incorporate them into your work as far as like, Web3, the digital space, social media?
Anybody want to take a shot? Yeah.
I can jump in if nobody wants to dive in just yet. For me, I think it was something that Leonard said, being flexible and being understanding that everything changes every day in our world, right? Whether it's a different category with the NFL opening it up from a crypto standpoint, or whether it's different things that come from a social standpoint and what you can and can't do from from any different way, shape, or form, and really be willing to adapt and understanding that things might come up and you have to change on the drop of a hat at different times. And you have to be creative. You have to be willing to make the effort. And sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. And from a partnership standpoint, that's where kind of we live, is the partner needs to be willing to know that too. So it's very much of that, going back to transparency and just being honest and open and knowing that like things might change in the future, but we're willing to try it now and go from there. So the adaptiveness, I think, is the biggest thing for that.
Thank you.
And Julia, I would just add, reading everything. I just I subscribe to way too many newsletters. I've got a stack of sports business journals here, which, I pay for. It's expensive, out of a just personally, but just everything you can do to stay in, informed on everything. I was interviewing someone the other day and they kept mixing up NIL and NLI. And, that's just an instant red flag to me that they're not read up on everything that's going on. So, just reading everything I say is so important.
Yeah, I've got to echo Seth's comments. Like, the generation that you guys have now and the way sports business works, the amount of information at your fingertips is like ridiculous compared to like me, a dinosaur, when I started in the space. Like, you didn't have newsletters that you could literally get every morning. Like, Seth, to your point, I think I get like 4 SBJ newsletters like on the daily. And like, there's some spaces that like I'm not even engaged in, but you need to stay like relatively fresh on what's going on. You don't need to be the subject matter expert, but you need to be aware. So devour as much of that info as you possibly can. It's there, it's accessible, like soak it all up.
That's great suggestions, Seth and Shelby both. I'm so glad you were right. You were spot on, Seth, with the idea of, just to Julia's question, is just staying connected to your industry. And I always mention the Sports Business Journal. There's certainly many digital sites, but the journal really is comprehensive in its coverage. I always say it sends a good message when in an interview that you drop in, maybe for strategic purposes, the fact you've seen a story, or that reminds you of a story in the Sports Business Journal that you read recently, blah, blah, blah. And if you truly are keeping in touch with issues that way, you drop that into a conversation or an interview, I think, again, it sends a really good message that it's important for you to stay, current and topical. And I think it's just the old-fashioned way, Julia, is you just dig. You find out, you talk to people, when you're in touch with people and you stay in touch, And even for me, even like students of mine, former students will send me articles. And hey, I don't know if you saw this, or it reminded me of something that you said in class a couple weeks ago. So it becomes a very interactive space where we're exchanging ideas and thoughts and trends. And so it's your network that will really help you in that regard too.
Jeff,
Thank you, Professor.
Sorry. Jeff, we have a question in the chat.
Yeah, was that Woody?
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, what do you want to just address the group about your question about obstacles and
yeah, I know Joey, he kind of touched on his personal story, and so I just wanted to know if whether at any point in their career any obstacles that they may have faced, and basically how they got through those obstacles and what they learned from it.
Good question.
I'll jump in, guys. Kind of in light of some other stories shared, this is far less of an obstacle than some that others have faced. But when I was living in New York, obviously being in London, I was somewhat close to home. All my family is back in London. My friends are back in London, and it was an easy 5-6 hour flight. Back home, I used to even do it on weekends, leave Friday, come back Monday. Mother isn't doing too well and is getting older as all of our parents do. And so moving out here to California was a huge decision for me because it doubles the commute. I can no longer go home on a whim. I actually haven't been home since kind of pre-pandemic. So for me, the obstacle there was the opportunity out here was too big to say no to professionally, but I knew that personally I was gonna have to make some sacrifices, and that's not easy to do. And so for each and every one of us, there's a fine balance as to how much we're willing to give and take there. But kind of going back to my earlier point, like to bet on yourself and understand that you're doing what's right for you is a leap of faith that eventually you have to come to. So I don't think it was as much of an obstacle because it was a decision that I chose to take. But I think it's a hard decision that I could easily have said, you know what, like I can find another role in New York and be comfortable. But I think even if you to speak to my mom today, she's happier that I'm out here and her vacations are sitting on the beach around the swimming pool versus riding the subway around Manhattan. So it can work out for the better.
That's great. Thank you, James. Melody, do you want to introduce yourself and ask a question?
Yes, of course. Thank you everyone for being here. I'm Melody Forsty. Lee actually invited me to this, so I'm actually happy that I ended up coming. We've been talking a lot about like building relationships and fostering those. Just from your guys' just experience, what are some of like the best ways that you've been able to keep those relationships or foster them or realize which ones are the most important ones to continue forward? Because I've been talking to a lot of people like informational interviews in so many different industries, sometimes it's hard to keep track.
I'll take a quick stab at that. So like, I've got the fortunate ability, we go from site to site to site working on projects. So what I love to do is, depending on where we are in a project, is like, if I haven't connected with somebody or talked with them in a while, I'm like, hey, you want to come down for a tour and come check it out? And it's, look, throw on a hard hat, throw on a vest, throw on some boots, you go get dirty for a little bit. But it's like, it's a fun way of reconnecting. It's a fun way of showing someone what I'm engaged in, but it's also a time that I can carve out space with them to talk about them and what they're doing. So if there's something unique that like you're a part of or that you're doing and you think, hey, this might be something cool to invite so-and-so to or to engage with them on, like think kind of outside the box in that realm. Like, whether it's like an event or a speaker or whatever it may be, if there's a way that you can see, hey, I can carve out some time with someone, and if it's 45 minutes to an hour to reconnect and kind of see where they're at and explain to them where I'm at, find unique spaces like that.
Yeah, I could chime in. So working with all 32 clubs, we obviously go and have quite a bit of travel and meet folks and interact with people from all over the nation. And for me, it's like, you know, obviously we have professional business relationships, but when I could find that thread of, you know, areas that I relate with somebody on a more personal level, you know, colleagues, like, do we listen to the same music? Do we like the same teams? In my case, all LA all day. Let's go. And I mean, honestly, it's great for networking, but it's also great for, you know, like just building and developing relationships for your own personal benefit. And you know, I had a 15-minute conversation with one of my buddies who works on product, who I never really see that often, about, you know, the concerts he's going to this summer, and there's a little bit of overlap there for us. So for me, it's really like the balance of professional and personal topics, because that makes it well-rounded. It keeps me stimulated, and it makes it a little bit more fun. So I think when you can find that thread of things that can really relate to someone on, that's beyond just, you know, business speak, that's something that I really place a lot of importance on.
I think, Joey, I think you're spot on with that. I think it's just like relationships you have in your, you know, personal relationships in your life. You know, if you know somebody's area of interest and you see something about one of those, whether it's, you know, a sports team, you know, a musical artist, or something that you remember that they, you know, have a fondness for, or whatever, you're probably going to, you know, say something, reach out. And you can do the same things in time as you build a relationship with professional contacts. I think LinkedIn is a big asset there, because, you know, the idea of having a place that you can find out sort of the background and backstories for people. You didn't have that 20 years ago. So now you can go and, you know, yeah, that's right, that person went to Long Beach State. You know, I'm from Long Beach, so blah, blah, blah. You know, you have a chance to get that information that before you wouldn't have been able to have gotten unless you had a personal relationship. Now, be proactive. If you see that common ground via LinkedIn or whatever your source of information is, you know, reach out. I mean, just because you don't hear something back doesn't mean stop doing that. Don't take it personally if you don't hear something back, but just make the effort to reach out and find some of those common ground areas that Joey referred to. Anyone else have thoughts on that?
I'll double down on that, Jeff.
Yeah.
You know, LinkedIn wasn't a thing back when I was a student. So to be able to use it, send messages. If people don't respond, they might respond in a month, they might respond in a week. You never know when you catch somebody, but keep doing it. I probably see a few every week, and I'll connect with the students that want to connect on certain topics, stuff like that. The people that are willing to connect are the ones that you're going to want to stay in touch with long term. And you never know where your people land. I never thought I'd end up here at a WNBA franchise leading a partnership team, and I'm here in Las Vegas, been here 2.5 months now. So it's all a connection that I had 11 years ago in the sports world is how I ended up here. So it's just if you put the effort in, you'll get the effort back from the other side. So don't hesitate, keep doing it.
Great. Thank you so much, you guys. Really appreciate it.
Anybody have any questions? We're just about ready to wrap things up, off to a great start. But if anybody, any students had any other questions or observations, anything you wanted to share with us? Anyone?
Jeff, I see that there are a couple of hands. I think, is it Shalak or Mr. Shaw? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. There we go. Yeah, Shalak?
Hey, my name's Shalak. I'm a student at UT Austin, originally from Philadelphia. My question was, like, how do you all manage your work-life balance? Because, like, I tend to, like, work on projects really passionate about, but I tend to work too much time on those projects. So, like, that'll be my question.
Hey, Nadia, do you have any thoughts on striking a balance
Yeah, you know, having gone from the NFL to NBC, where my first project was the Winter Olympics, you know, it's a work in progress for me. I'm going to be completely honest with you. It's a work in progress, but that was a big part and parcel of why I did switch careers, right? And when I was at AEG, I was actually traveling almost every single month. So in all my life in sports, it had always been kind of hammered into me that, hey, you should be putting in those 12-hour days to get to where you want to be. And I'm 100% grateful for it, right? Because that 15-hour day is what got me to the Super Bowl at the end of the day. And I think there has to be an understanding that, you know, you may or may not be the person going to the Super Bowl if you're putting in a 6-hour day, right? But my biggest thing is, like, I was doing all this in my early years of my career, like right out of college up until, you know, I don't want to give my age away too much, but in the years where, you know, maybe the personal relationships were not as important. But I think for me, it was a big kind of turn of life, really, where I'd hit an age where I was just like, look, I'm not really even in town every month. Like, I'm almost gone every single month on a given basis. And I'd chosen that career, and I'd chosen it to get to where I'm at now, which I'm pretty satisfied with, of course. But I think for me, the biggest thing was taking that step back, right? Taking that step back and understanding that there is more to life than our careers, right? Like, I think we're very lucky, all of us who work in sports, that we're not the people who are like, well, I don't live to work, I work to live, right? I never want to be that person who's like, I clock in and I work just to live. I don't think any of us here feel of that mindset. So that is kind of the first understanding, right? To be in this industry that is a passion, that is for most of us, it is a job, but I'm, at least when I was like clocking in really long days for the Olympics and doing something till 9 p.m. where I was like, oh my goodness, like, I can't believe this is what I'm dealing with right now. My biggest understanding was like, look, as frustrating as it might be to try to figure out why this one thing is not working at 9 p.m. for the Olympics, the truth of the matter is, the subject matter at the end of the day is Olympics. For Shelby, it is Legends, it is SoFi. For James, right? For Joey, it's the NFL. For Jason, it's for this amazing new team over in Vegas. I think that's kind of what keeps all of us doing this. And with that, though, it's like, it's also understanding that, like, literally 50 years down the line, you might remember that Super Bowl you went to, but who are you going to really remember? Your friends and family around you. So always keep that in mind. Never, 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 never forget that. That at the end of the day, when you're looking down at your life, of course, you're going to think about all the great accomplishments that you made in your career. Hopefully you go into a career that you care about, that makes you happy, that makes it feel like it's not a job. But never forget that when you are on your deathbed with all your people surrounding you, you want it to be the people that you care about. So don't forget that.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Shlok, about balance. Coach Wooden has always said that the two most important words in the English language were love and balance. And I always say, I thought it's great that he gives that kind of stature to the word balance, because it's so important. It was important, hugely important as a basketball coach on the players on the court, but it's equally important just in your lives. So you'll talk to a lot of people that say if they had one regret about their career, it's that they didn't stop more along the way to enjoy the journey. So I think that's a constant challenge for all of us working in some aspect of sports, is to strike a balance. So I don't know if there's a one size fits all answer, but I think it's something we're all working on. Thank you for Nadia for your thoughts there. Maybe we have time for one more. What do you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question about all the guests of whether or not all of them or any of them have started with an internship, and on that internship, did they get that based on like someone they knew, or is that something they got on their own? I just kind of want to know the process was for them.
Seth, I remember you had a number of internship opportunities come up while you were at USC. You made a lot of them happen by just your diligence. Any internship observations now, looking back?
Yeah, I mean, it's so important. I mean, yeah, look at me. I interned at NBC at the London Olympics in 2012, and now I'm at NBC a decade later. Wow, full decade later. But yeah, no, I had a ton of internships, had a ton of part-time jobs to afford to do those internships. I just think it's, yeah, it's so important to do as many as you can. And, you know, and really maximize it, not just work for your boss, but also kind of like Nadia was saying, like, you know, talk to that person in the other department and maximize that. So I think, yeah, get as many as you can and make the most of the time that you're there.
Yeah, because I think sometimes it's just as important to find out maybe what you don't want to do for your career in sports. Sports is it's a broad landscape, and sometimes finding out what isn't the right fit for you is just as important. And you don't find that out unless you sort of put yourself in positions sometimes to be uncomfortable, because it's good to have tried lots of different things, and you'll find out a little bit more about yourself if you do, and maybe the area that you say probably isn't for me. Anyone else want to share a thought about internships? Anyone that was really significant for you, or how you landed it?
I can jump in.
Oh, sorry,
Nadia.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
I interned coming out of undergrad. I was fortunate enough to get an internship with Major League Soccer, and I had played soccer in college, so obviously was a soccer fan. Knew I wanted to work in sports, but had zero idea as to what I wanted to do. It just so happens that the connection I had worked within partnerships at the league office, and so I was working under him. And I think, Jeff, you said something that's really important. Internships are great for figuring out it's great experience if you know what you want to do. It's also great to figure out what you don't want to do. The experience that I had there, I knew I wanted to be in the realm of something related to brand and related to marketing, but didn't know anything beyond that. After understanding kind of the reason and rationale as to why brands wanted to spend as much money as they do, naming buildings or aligning with teams, once kind of the why behind partnerships was exposed to me, the experience I had was, wow, like I think I've just found what I want to do for the rest of my life. And that led to me then going back to grad school after the internship. I started that internship after undergrad, and the goal was to just intern and start working. After that internship, I thought, you know what, this is what I want to do for my career. How do I best prepare myself now for the long term? And so the experience I had interning was almost a double down effect to say, all right, like you're not ready to start working yet. Let's go and spend 2 years in grad school. I had the benefit of living in New York at the time, which if any of you guys are in New York, you couldn't be in a better place as it relates to going around and networking. I think my final year of grad school, I probably spent 3 nights of every week going to dinners or happy hours or networking events, just trying to meet folks. So just one tidbit for those of you that are in New York, every league has an office there, every brand has an office there, agencies are there, like you couldn't be in a better spot. So make the most of that opportunity. And Javier, to answer your original question around, did we get internships via relationships we had, or did we go and source them ourselves? Personally, I was fortunate enough to get one through a relationship I had. But that's not always the way. I see countless, sorry, my little puppy just got home, so she's excited over here. I've seen countless folks and colleagues of mine that went and sourced their own internships that have then led to full-time gigs. So there's no one-size-fits-all answer there. I think consistency is key. So if there's places, if there's brands you want to work for, there's teams you want exposure within, be persistent. I get emails every single day. Even Ron, for example, messaging me on LinkedIn. I think I ignored probably the first 3 messages he sent me. The 4th one, I happened to have time, and I was like, let's do it. So persistency is key, and just keep knocking on doors. And sorry for the barking.
That's great advice. Great advice, James. Nadia, did you have something you were going to say?
Yes. Yeah. So I, on kind of a similar train, actually, like people always ask, how did I get my job at the NFL? That's probably the thing that in my LinkedIn inbox is the #1 question, right? Because you look at something like the league, the how I got my job there was I met my boss at the NFL when I'd been there previously while I was at my last job Shelby probably knows this, when I was at AEG, I joined a professional organization called Women in Sports and Events that caters to having professional women across the sports industry. So from Lakers, Clippers, Rams, NFL, what have you. I joined this organization, just fish out of water, out of the blue. I signed up for a mentorship program through there. And that's where I met my NFL boss, who serendipitously at the time was looking for someone to fill a role on our team. And as someone who had never worked in TV, had never really done that side of the business, she took a chance on me because she'd met me through this organization. She trusted the AEG name and knew that, you know, I could be someone that could be trusted. If there's one thing I impart on all of you guys is seek out the closest kind of organization like that you can. Obviously joining things like this is step number one, but seek out those opportunities because you never know where they'll lead. And that's my number one piece of advice to people is it really does work. I would not have gotten the foot that I did in sports, been able to get my job at Peacock relatively easily because I'd worked in a sports league for 4 years. And that was all through literally just one decision I made where I was like, let me go to this organization. What could it hurt? Absolutely nothing, of course.
Great stuff. Great stuff, Nadia. This has been so amazing to hear from all of you and your stories. And you just see, again, sports, it's the non-linear path. So it's all of these things. There's no playbook that has, you know, kind of the how-to get where you might want to get to in sports. It's picking up information like this from events like this and people and your classes and guest speakers and contacts through LinkedIn. It all adds up. So the fact that you guys are here and with us listening is to your credit, and couldn't be more grateful to all of the industry professionals taking the time to join us today. Ron, anything you want to wrap things up?
Yeah, this was fantastic. And, you know, I just have to tell you all, it's full transparency. It has been a lot of work trying to put this together. It's been frustrating. It's been deflating at times. And today was one of those days where you see what you're trying to do. You have a vision, you want to do it, but, you know, there are various obstacles. So sometimes obstacles are within you, sometimes they're outside of you too. And this particular event, as my wife can tell you, just helped to fortify me and uplift me and just to continue on to fight. And so this is, you know, why we do this, is why we put our, you know, our sweat, blood, time, and everything into this, because we want to help and tremendous allies in the industry like we're having here tonight make it worth the while. So thank you all, the industry folks, for joining us and for reinforcing my desire to continue to do this and move forward and to finish this process strong. And so, and we'll obviously continue to be in touch. There's a lot more that we want to do. Jeff and I want to do with you all. And students, we have a fantastic conference tomorrow. And please, hopefully you all can show up for parts of it, but let your friends know. I mean, it doesn't make sense to waste this valuable experience that's being shared with you. And so please, if you know if friends who want to get into sports are just curious about it, or they just want to boost for their career no matter what, we can have some folks who have a lot of experience and they're showing up for you. And so show up if you can. It's going to be between 8 and 6. Don't have to be there the whole time. Come here for parts. I'm putting a link in again for you to check it out as a flyer there. But let your friends know. They will not be disappointed. All right. So with that, I'm going to stop preaching. But thank you all again, you know, students for showing up. I thank you industry professionals so much for all that you offered. And I'm sorry. And Leonard too, obviously, of course, it goes without Leonard too. And I want to thank my wife. She's just been a fantastic partner. She keeps me on track. So thank her. And James, I have to say, James, your wife must be a good lady to have given up what she gave up to come out here. So you're fortunate as well, I can tell.
Well, she's just crazy. One of the two.
All right. Well, thank you everyone again. And Jeff, thank you so much for doing a fantastic job as usual. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Sounds great.